Momo's graveyard shift, the terror nobody talks about. The first scream didn't sound human. It tore through the empty building like metal scraping metal, sharp enough to freeze Jake's blood in his veins. He pressed his back against the cold wall of the hallway, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The light flickered, and then he saw her. Momo. She stood at the far end of the corridor, half hidden in the shadows, her long black hair dripping down her face like wet ropes. Her eyes were too wide, too stretched, as if someone had pulled them open with hooks. And her mouth, that awful, crooked smile, it was growing wider slowly, like something inside her was pushing it open from behind her skin. Jake's breath caught in his chest. He had heard stories. But nothing looked like this. Her head tilted sideways, bending far too much, almost touching her shoulder. Her fingers curled like claws as she took one slow step toward him. "Jake," she whispered, except no lips moved. The voice came from everywhere, behind him, beside him, inside his ears. Jake's flashlight died. The hallway went completely black. Then, just inches from his face, he heard her breathing. And everything went silent. Jake Turner wasn't supposed to be working the graveyard shift alone. When he took the job as a night security guard for the old Harborview office complex, he was told it was an easy paycheck. A calm building. A quiet neighborhood. Mostly empty floors that only needed someone to walk through every hour. He believed them. On his first night, nothing strange happened, just humming lights, dusty hallways, and the smell of old carpet. By the second night, though, the elevator began stopping on floors no one had called. Doors he closed were found open again. Papers rustled when there was no wind. Still, Jake brushed it off. He needed the job. His mom's hospital bills weren't going to pay themselves. But everything changed on the third night. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Jake heard footsteps on the 6th floor, soft, careful, almost playful. He checked the cameras. Nothing. Just static for a few seconds, then the image came back, blurry and shaking. He went up anyway, trying to convince himself it was a worker who came back late. But the hallway was empty. Only dim lights and a broken vending machine buzzing loudly. He started his walkthrough, humming to keep himself calm. That's when he saw the first sign. Long black strands of hair are scattered on the floor. Not dropped, not fallen. They were placed. Arranged. Forming a crooked circle around the door to room 612. Jake swallowed hard and touched the door handle. It was ice cold. "Hello?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. No answer. He pushed the door open. Inside, the whole room looked like someone had lived there, but in the dark. Scribbles filled the walls. Deep scratches dug into the wooden floor. And in the middle of the room lay an old flip phone, its screen cracked. Then it turned on by itself. A text message popped up. "I'm here." Jake stepped back so fast he tripped over the chair behind him. The phone fell off the table and slid across the floor toward him. He didn't touch it. He wouldn't dare. The lights suddenly flickered, buzzing violently. The air grew heavy, colder, as if someone invisible had entered the room. That's when Jake smelled it. Wet hair. Rotting water. The scent of something that had been underwater for too long. His heartbeat sped up. He wasn't alone. A soft whisper brushed past his ear. "Turn around." Jake spun, flashlight shaking. And the door slammed shut by itself. He grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Something was holding it from the other side. Something strong. The lights dimmed again. And the hairs on the back of Jake's neck stood straight. From behind him came the slow creaking sound. The sound of something lifting its head. Jake turned his flashlight to the corner. A shadow moved. Then the face came out of the darkness. Wide eyes, stretching smile, dripping hair. Momo. She crawled toward him, her joints bending the wrong way, her limbs moving like a spider that had learned to walk upright. Jake froze, unable to scream. She reached out. Her hand inches from his face. Just as the window behind her shattered, spraying glass everywhere. And then, everything went black. Jake woke up coughing, his throat burning with dust and cold air. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was. His vision was blurry, his head pounding, and tiny shards of glass lay scattered across his jacket. He was still in room 612. The window was broken, but the room was empty. Momo was gone. Jake pushed himself up slowly, every muscle in his body shaking. His flashlight lay on the floor a few feet away, blinking weakly like it was dying. He didn't want to touch it. It felt like touching anything might make her come back. But he needed light. He grabbed it, and the dim beam wobbled across the room. "Momo?" he whispered without meaning to. His voice cracked. The silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It felt thick, heavy, like something was hiding inside it. Jake tried the door again. This time it opened easily, like nothing had happened. The hallway outside looked normal. Too normal. That was the scary part. He stepped out, breathing fast, and shut the door behind him. He needed to get downstairs. He needed to get outside. He didn't care about the job anymore. He didn't even care if he got fired. He just needed to survive until sunrise. But as he walked toward the elevator, he heard something strange from below, the sound of water dripping. The building didn't have any water leaks. It hadn't rained in days. The sound was coming from the stairwell. Drip. 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 Jake swallowed hard and tried to take the elevator instead, but when he pressed the button, the lights above the doors flickered, then went completely dark. "Come on, not now," he muttered. The dripping grew louder. He heard a soft dragging sound, like someone pulling their feet across wet floor tiles. Jake backed away from the stairwell door. "Nope. No. I'm not opening that," he whispered. But then the door creaked open on its own. Jake froze. The stairwell was pitch black, darker than it should ever be, even at night. His flashlight shook in his hand as he pointed it downward. And there she was. Not fully visible. Just her hair. Long, black strands hanging over the edge of the first step, dripping wet like they'd just been pulled out of a lake. Jake stepped back slowly. One step. Another. His shoes squeaked, a tiny, stupid sound that seemed to echo forever. The dripping stopped. Then the hair moved. As if something underneath was crawling, rising, lifting itself up the stairs. Jake ran. He sprinted down the hallway, turning every corner without checking where he was going. He didn't care. He just needed to get as far from that stairwell as possible. His breath was loud, too loud, bouncing off the walls. He reached the security office and slammed the door shut behind him. He locked it, then pushed a chair against the handle. His hands shook uncontrollably as he grabbed the walkie-talkie on the desk. "Anybody hear me?" he yelled. "Please! Someone answer me!" Static. He shook it hard. "Hello? Please! I need help!" Only more static. Jake dropped it and grabbed his phone. No service. The signal bars were gone, like the phone had died even though it still had battery. "No, no, no, this can't be real," he whispered. Then he heard it. A soft thump. Right outside the office door. Jake froze. Another thump, louder. Like someone gently tapping, with their forehead. Tap. 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 The chair resting against the handle began to move. Not violently. Slowly. Like someone was pressing against it, testing it, teasing him. Jake stepped back, knocking papers off the desk. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the room again. Then, through the tiny security window in the door, a single strand of long black hair slid down the glass. Jake's heart nearly stopped beating. "Momo," he whispered. The hair disappeared. Then something slammed into the door with such force the entire frame shook. Jake fell backward, hitting the floor hard. His flashlight rolled away. The lights in the office flickered violently. Another slam. And another. And another. The chair slid across the floor like it weighed nothing. Jake scrambled to his feet as the door bent inward, cracking around the edges. Something was pushing with inhuman strength. One more hit would break it. One more. The lights in the room went out completely. Jake was swallowed in darkness. And from the other side of the door, he heard her whisper, "Let me in." The door shook again, so hard this time that dust rained down from the ceiling. Jake backed up until his shoulders hit the filing cabinet, his breath coming out in fast, painful gasps. He couldn't see anything. Not the desk, not the walkie-talkie, not even his own hands. The room was pitch black. Something scraped slowly along the door. Not claws. Not nails. It sounded like a long, wet finger being dragged across metal. Jake's chest tightened. He forced himself to move, one small step at a time, toward where he thought the flashlight had rolled. A soft giggle echoed through the darkness. Jake froze. It wasn't a human giggle. It was high and whispery, like it came through broken speakers. It came from everywhere at once. Then the doorknob began to turn. Slowly. Steadily. Like whoever was outside wanted him to hear every click, every inch. "No, please," Jake whispered, even though he knew begging wouldn't help. The knob twisted all the way. Then stopped. Silence. Jake reached the floor, patting around blindly. His fingertips hit something cold. The flashlight. He grabbed it, his only hope, and pointed it toward the door. Click. The flashlight didn't turn on. Click, click. Nothing. Jake smacked it hard with his palm. The beam finally burst to life, bright enough to make him squint. He aimed it straight at the security door just as the door swung open. Jake screamed and dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, spinning wildly, sending shaky beams around the room like a lighthouse. But the doorway was empty. Momo wasn't standing there. No figure. No shadow. Nothing. The hallway outside was silent. Jake's hands trembled as he picked up the flashlight again. He leaned toward the doorway slowly, ready to run at the slightest sound. Then he heard it. Drip. Another drip. But this time, it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the room. Jake lifted the flashlight, his fingers cold with fear. The beam shook as he slowly traced the walls, the ceiling, the corners. Then he saw it. In the far corner of the office, behind the desk, a dark puddle was forming on the floor. A puddle of water, black, thick, and spreading. Jake took a step back. The puddle rippled. Something was rising from it, pushing upward through the dark liquid like a face breaking through the surface of a lake. Hair came first. Long, wet. Hanging. Then the eyes. Huge. Too wide. Staring directly at him. Jake scrambled backward, tripping over the chair that had once blocked the door. His flashlight fell from his hand again, but this time it stayed on, trapped in his trembling fingers. "Momo," he whispered, barely breathing. Her head rose slowly above the puddle, even though the floor was solid. Water dripped down her cheeks like tears. Her smile stretched wider. She crawled forward, no sound, no footsteps, just that awful dragging motion of her limbs bending wrong. Jake forced himself to stand. He ran. He bolted out of the office as fast as his legs would move. He sprinted down the hallway, the air colder than ice. Behind him he heard the wet slapping sound of her crawling after him, fast, too fast. Jake didn't look back. He dashed into the elevator lobby and slammed the button repeatedly. "Come on, come on, come on!" The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Jake jumped inside and hit the lobby button. The doors began to close. But something slid between them. A strand of hair. Long, dark, and dripping. Jake gasped as more hair forced its way in, thin at first, then thicker, like someone was pushing a whole head of it through the gap. "No, and no!" Jake slammed the closed door button again and again. For a moment, the doors stuttered against the hair. Then they forced shut, slicing it clean. The elevator jerked violently, then began to descend. Jake collapsed to the floor, shaking. But halfway down, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered. Then the emergency phone inside the elevator rang. Jake stared at it, frozen. It rang again. He slowly reached out with a shaking hand and lifted it to his ear. Static hissed, followed by a voice whispering, "I'm already downstairs."